Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today with us for a new session organized for VVBs and Auditors. So my name is Anna Coglitore, and I'm the Senior Officer in the Oversight team at Gold Standard. In today's session, we will dive into the topic of social safeguards and auditing techniques. We have a very nice team of experts today in the panel with us, which I'm very excited to be introducing to you all. I will start with Giovanna Da Ponte, our Manager Oversight. Then we also have Anshika Gupta, our Manager Standard Development and Innovation. And then we have our two consultants, Jacobo Carrizales, that you can see, and Mariana Smith. Mariana, I cannot see you yet on the screen. Maybe you can let me know if you can, you're able to share your camera. Both Jacobo and Mariana have plenty of experience in social audits, and together with Anshika today, they will be sharing their knowledge, experience, and best practices. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. As usual, I will start with some house rules. The session is being recorded, and the recording will be available after the session. And of course, as usual, please, if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A box. Let's do a quick rundown of the agenda of today. Today, we will start with a little icebreaker and an introduction on social audits. This is just to set the scene about the session and to give you some more context. And then we will dive into the 5 gold standard social safeguarding principles, where Giovanna will give us a quick overview of the safeguards principle and auditing techniques. And then we're ready to start with the best parts. We will have some engaging polls where we would like to have your participation. And then we will have a nice panel discussions with our speakers, where we will be also sharing some best practices. Of course, then after the panel discussion, there will be a live Q&A. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A box. And then in the last few minutes, we can wrap up with a few important reminders, where I will share some information as well about the next training session. So please stay with us for that. And then we will be closing the session with a poll where we will ask you for some feedback and evaluation. Yeah, I would say let's go. Let's break the ice. Let's warm up a bit. I'm going to launch a quick poll now. You should see on your screen. So yes, you should all be able to see the poll on my screen. Yeah, how excited are you today? Are you about today's session? We are very excited. So hopefully you too. I see already responses coming in, which is super nice. And let's see, I'm going to share the results with you here on the screen. So we are very excited. That's very nice. Thank you so much. Some people are also finding it interesting. They're looking forward to it and curious. So super nice. Thank you. And I have another question that I'm going to launch now. So what are your expectations for today's session? And we'll share my results again here. We have deepen my knowledge in safeguards and gain new insights and perspectives. They're going super strong. Also, others are seeking for practical solutions and tips and best tools and approaches. I guess we're all looking forward to all these things. So let's see, hopefully we can deliver this in the session today. That's very cool. So, oh yeah, one thing I forgot to mention, I'm sorry about that. The answers are, of course, anonymous. And why did we do this little icebreaker? Just because we are going to use this poll function throughout the session, so that So yeah, now you know how it works. You are engaged with it. You just have to click a button. So yeah, and most importantly, please enjoy the session. And for any questions you have, let us know. And I'm moving on now with an introduction. Yeah, so today, as I said, we are talking about social audits. A social audit is crucial for evaluating how well a project meets social, ethical, and community standards. It's a very important concept for the gold standard because with our safeguarding principles and requirements, we want to make sure that gold standard certified projects are delivering the best for both our community, the communities, and the environment. Your role as VVBs and auditors is really key for gold standard certification, and we really value your work and our collaboration. In the past months, we have made quite some changes in the certification process. And as VVBs and auditors, you now carry significant responsibilities, including the authority to make certification decisions. With authority, of course, comes a certain level of accountability, and we recognize the expertise and diligence that requires. So at Gold Standard, we are really committed to maintaining the highest quality of our standard, and we want to ensure that our VVB have the resources needed to succeed. And that's why we are investing time in these live sessions. We really want to support you in building a strong understanding of our standard. And we want to provide helpful guidance, continuous learning opportunities to support you in navigating these new responsibilities with more confidence and clarity. Yeah, this is why we're here today. With our panelists, we will focus on the 5 social safeguarding principles, and we will talk about challenges and problems that you may face on the ground. So this session is not about theory; it's really about what happens on the ground. So we will be sharing some tips, some best practices that hopefully can give you some good insights when performing social audits. And of course, we encourage you as well to share any experiences or insights with us because you are experts in the field, and we would love to learn from you as well. So as I wrap up my introduction now, I will stop talking. I would like to thank you for being here and for taking the time to participate. And let's get the most out of the session. So please be engaged and participate with us. So as I mentioned earlier, I'll be checking in with you with some questions. It's not a test. It's just to get us thinking. And of course, if you have questions for the panelists in the meanwhile, you can put them in the Q&A box because I'll be monitoring that one as well throughout the session. So yeah, now I will really stop talking. And Joanna, would you like to take it from here?
Thank you so much, Anna. It's amazing. Thank you for your participation. And so just to jump into the social audits, I mean, as mentioned by Anna, the social audits assess and verifies the project's adherence to social principle and safeguards. It's very important because these audits are designed to ensure that the project upholds social integrity, respects human rights, and delivers tangible benefits to the local communities. So saying all this, important to mention here is that we have in place many social auditing techniques. I'm not going to go into deep in all this. I just briefly mention what we have up there just to give the framework for our discussions that we're going to have in a couple of minutes. So the social audit techniques are implemented actually to evaluate the social impacts of the projects while ensuring, again, here, transparency and community engagement. So we'll have a couple of them mentioned here. We have, for instance, participatory approaches, such as focus groups or community forums. We're naming here such another social technique, auditing technique, which is documentation review, or observational techniques, which is also something that we find very much useful, and this is a common practice done by the auditors, field visits, community mappings, and of course, last but not least, triangulation. This is where we cross-check reference data from the interviewers, employers, and the documentation review. So saying this, just in a nutshell, some of the social auditing techniques we're going to be discussing today in the session. Just to give context to the discussions. So next slide, please, Anna, and back to you. So yes, social safeguards, this is what we're talking about. I'm not going to go much into detail here, already mentioned by Anna. So if we're going to go from theory to practice, and these are the 5 main social safeguarding principles we have in our safeguarding principle and requirements at Gold Standard. So we're going to be diving into the principle number 1 on human rights, principle number 2 on gender equality and women's empowerment, principle number 3 on community health and safety, principle number 4 on cultural heritage, indigenous peoples, displacement and resettlement, and finally, principle number 5 on corruption. Next slide, please.
I think I have a little poll here that I can launch.
Exactly, sorry. Yeah, back to you then, Anna. Thank you.
Yes, we have a question for you. I'm going to launch a poll on the screen now. Do you think there are some social safeguards, the ones that are now on the screen, that are more critical to assess than others? If you think so or not, please let us know which one you think. I'm looking for my results again. So let's see. Let me look at more details. Some of you are saying no. Oh, I lost them. Let me see. You have to get used to this. Apologies. So I see here corruption. I see human rights. Principle 2, that will be gender. Hazardous waste, cultural heritage. So I see a little bit of everything, but I also see a big no there in the middle, which means probably that you all think that all of these are really important. And Shika, would you like to add something there?
Thanks, Anna. So I would like to add here that there is no single safeguard that is universally more critical than others. All safeguards are equally important as they address, different social or environmental or economic risks. However, having said that, I would also like to add that their relevance and urgency depends on the project's context as well. For example, a renewable energy project which involves construction might need a stronger focus on community health and safety to address accidents and ensure safe working conditions. Another example can be a land use project which is in an indigenous area that would require careful attention to cultural heritage and indigenous rights, ensuring free, prior, and informed consent is obtained. And another, maybe a random example, can be a manufacturing project employing a large workforce should prioritize workers' rights and child labor to prevent labor exploitation. So gold standard requires that both the project developer and the VVB conduct a risk assessment to determine which safeguard is most relevant. The assessment can be based on various key parameters, for example, the project type, the location and the community context, the scale and the scope of activities, or even the stakeholder feedback. So in the end, to summarize this whole thing, ultimately no safeguard should be overlooked, but the focus should be on applying a context-driven approach to ensure that risks are properly identified and also mitigated.
Great. Thank you, Anshika. I think that was very clear. Thank you for clarifying. All right. Thank you all for participating. I will move on now quickly to the principle 1. Let's start with principle 1, human rights. Here as well, I'd like to ask you another question. So I'll be launching another poll. There you go. I think you can now see it all on the screen. So when talking about human rights, in your opinion, what are common challenges in conducting upfront human rights assessments for climate and development projects? And I'm gonna look for some results now. I'm gonna see if we get any responses in. There we go. So I see here response, understanding local context. I see transparency, and I see, I'm not sure why, let me see. I don't know why I cannot see the question and all the answers. lack of transparency in interviews. Yeah, there we go. Maybe this helps. Let me see. Understanding. Limited time and resources. I don't know why it keeps jumping. Only policy on paper, but struggle to find evidence. Jacobo, would you like to add anything there?
Yes, of course, Anna, and thank you very much for having me here. Well, I can see a pattern emerging from these answers, and I would say understanding the local context, including not just the regulation in place and the characteristics of the project, but understanding the entire situation surrounding the project. And that brings me an idea of the jurisdictional knowledge. Audit teams are very well complemented when there is jurisdictional knowledge and is put into operation to perform assessments. Definitely knowing the regulation, knowing the community, and doing some prior research as part of the planning of the audits is definitely something that we want to have in the assessments when performing validation or verification. Also, it might be necessary, and this is a challenge that I've faced in my own experience, some capacity building on human rights. Sometimes we need to make sure we are talking the very same language with the people we are interviewing, with the people we are assessing. So capacity building could as well be challenging, and could also be a very good strategy to perform social audits.
Great, thank you. Joanna, I'll pass it over to you now.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, this is all valid. These are all valid aspects, valid to be mentioned, to be discussed within the framework of human rights. So, diving in a little bit more into that, question now to Anshika now is, what measures can be implemented in project design to proactively identify and mitigate risks of human rights violations, particularly about workers' rights and child labor as per gold standard safeguards? Maybe you can give us some insights here, Anshika. Thanks.
Thanks for that question, Giovanna. Protecting human rights and particularly workers' rights and also preventing child labor is a fundamental part of responsible project design under the gold standard safeguards. And to ensure that projects uphold these principles, several key factors or measures can be implemented right from the start of the project inception. Firstly, I would say it is very important to conduct an upfront risk assessment. Even before a project begins, it is crucial to assess potential risks related to forced labor, child labor, unfair wages, and also unsafe working conditions. This involves engaging with local communities, reviewing labor laws, and also understanding industry specific risks pertaining to the type of technology or the intervention that is implemented by the project developer. Secondly, I would say it is also very important to ensure that there is a clear and fair employment agreement. Workers must have formal contracts that outlines fair wages, working hours, that is capped at a maximum of 48 hours per week as per our safeguarding principle requirements, provisions of annual leaves, occupational health and safety. This prevents exploitation and also sets clear expectations for both employers and the workers, and it minimizes the risks of any such potential occurrences during the project implementation. Thirdly, I would say implementing a strict age verification and also a child protection measure. To prevent child labor, projects should establish robust age verification systems and also prohibit children from engaging in hazardous work. This includes conducting ID checks, engaging with local schools, and ensuring that no child is working under any exploitative conditions. And when the VVBs are on ground, they can actually visually see if there are any kids involved, or if there are strict provisions in place for the project implementation, that there is no children involved in the working of the project. Fourth, I would like to add that projects must also prioritize worker health and safety. And finally, coming to establishing accessible and anonymous grievance mechanism. Having a grievance mechanism is very important, where workers must have a safe space to report human rights violation without any kind of fear of retaliation. And this can include anonymous phone calls or suggestion boxes, or even an independent oversight committee to see that complaints are taken seriously and are also addressed. So I think by integrating these measures, projects can actively safeguard workers' rights, preventing exploitation.
Thank you, Ashika. Exactly. Those are the points that we want to stress out today and very much aligning with our standards. So the next question, then maybe to you, Mariana, now is in projects where child labor, as you were mentioning, Anshika, is detected, what immediate steps should be taken to ensure compliance with the gold standard safeguards and protect the affected children? If you can give us a little bit of insights on that.
Hello, Giovanna. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And also thank you to Anjika for setting the background. So when doing social audits, it's very important, I think, to first do an assessment and then implement and then monitoring afterwards. So the question you asked me, it typically falls within the assess range. What immediate steps should be taken to ensure the compliance with the safeguards to protect affected children? So the immediate steps, I would think, is to do a risk assessment and to ensure protection. The risk assessment will tell you what area of work were the children in. Was it one child? Was it many children? The age of the children? The working conditions, and then if there was any potential harm to the child. And is it throughout the area or the company or the project, or is it only in a small area of it? Then the next step would be to stop all the activities involving child labor immediately and ensure that no child is further engaged in any form of work that violates their rights or endangers their well-being. So examples of that is hazardous or exploitative conditions. If deemed necessary, there must be the immediate and safety removal of the children from these conditions. One might need, or the auditor might ask the project that they need to secure emergency support from local child welfare agencies, maybe relocate the children to a safe environment. But that also very much depends on the situation of the child. Are the children with their parents? Are they orphans? Is it modern slavery, for example, where kidnapped kids are used to do the work? Is it single parents households, or even in extreme conditions, is it child households? The assistance that one can get is to inform the project owner and the local authorities. That all, of course, depends on the situation, what you assessed as an auditor, how serious this condition is, and if it's a transgression of the law. Then one can also engage in child protection NGOs, government bodies, and community leaders to ensure the children receive proper support, such as schooling or vocational training. And in areas where UNICEF is present, it will be very helpful to engage them as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariana. Thank you, Anshika, for the insights. I mean, this is very, very valuable, and therefore I will jump in without further ado to the next slide, which is to capture a little bit the best practices for human rights, the principle number 1. And as stressed by our panelists today, of course, I mean, to have a grievance mechanism in place is very important. This should be known by the interviewees and then by the workers. Also, make sure that you record all the everything that you see. This is the observation auditing technique again, to make sure that you record everything that you're seeing. If you are missing any evidence, again, you should take into consideration, go back to the place and take note and take the evidence you need for that. Also important here to mention something maybe not discussed for now, but it's also a good practice here is to choose a neutral place for the interviews. So this will ensure that you build trust with the interviewees, and also, in case possible, to work with local auditors also to build this, again, trust among the employer and interviewees. So this is some of the common practices done, and this just again just to wrap up the best practices for principle number 1. Yes, thank you. And moving forward.
Thank you, Joanna. Yeah, I think now we can move forward to principle 2. Again, as earlier, I also have a little question for you all. Because now we're talking about gender equality, women's empowerment. So let me see, you should see the question pop up now on your screen. So I'm curious about your experiences here. When talking about equitable participation of both men and women in project activities, what strategies can be employed? Just on top of your heads, what can you think of? Okay, we're starting to get some results. I'm seeing here pay, I see it's been mentioned, salary, equal salary, training, and it keeps refreshing for me. Ensuring women's safety at project location, equal wages, non-discrimination policies. And Shika, would you like to add anything here and help us a little bit to read the results? Oh, you're on mute, I see.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was talking and I was on mute. Okay. I was saying that the attendees have summarized this issue pretty well. I think a lot of legit points have been raised here. So at gold standard, equitable participation of men and women is not just about inviting them to project discussions. It's also about creating an enabling environment where both genders can actively engage and also contribute to decision making, which is very important. It's not just mere presence that is required, but their voice should also be heard during the decision making. So I think it's very important, number one, for the consultation to be gender sensitive. The project developers must ensure that both men and women, particularly from the marginalized group, have equal access to stakeholder consultations. This means sharing information in ways that are accessible, using gender responsive language, and engaging women's organization to ensure their perspectives are included. So it will ensure that none of the groups is systematically or in the system itself, they are removed from their access to the stakeholder consultation because of various reasons. We'll discuss it later. And the project developer may tweak the participation conditions if that's required. See, we know, women often face barriers such as household responsibilities or even mobility constraints. To address this, meetings should be scheduled at convenient times and locations. And where needed, projects should offer childcare support as well, or maybe transportation assistance to remove these obstacles so that their participation can be maximized. And projects should also promote equal decision-making opportunities. Setting participation quotas for women in project governance, leadership roles, and also technical training programs is the key strategy over here. Additionally, providing financial literacy and leadership trainings can also empower women to contribute meaningfully to decision making, and it will also enhance the implementation of the project activity because they'll be able to collect more stakeholder feedback and more concrete opinions from the people who are actually getting impacted from their project implementation. And finally, to summarize this, I would also say that it is also very important to monitor and report the progress as well. So the projects must track and also report gender disaggregated data on participation and benefits to ensure that gender related objectives are being met. So in our SDG impact tool, if you see, there are a lot of parameters that actually require the gender disaggregated data, but a lot of monitoring indicators might not require them mandatorily to be reported, but it's always a good practice for the project developers to go ahead and report such a data and VVBs to validate and verify that data. So by integrating these strategies, we move beyond mere representation and their physical presence, and we create a truly inclusive project environment where both men and women contribute to the entire decision making.
Great. Thank you, Anshika. I will stop sharing the poll for now, and thank you all as well for responding. That's been great. Joanna, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anna, and thank you, Anshika, for that clarification. Very much agree on the points mentioned. And maybe you can again come in and discuss a bit on a couple of good examples of strategies to assess the representatives of women in stakeholder consultations, for instance. That will be very much appreciated. Thank you. Anshika, over to you.
So, like I mentioned, representation goes beyond numbers. It's about ensuring that women's voices are heard, valued, and also considered in project decision making. So, firstly, it's very important to track the participation data. Simply counting attendees is not enough. Projects must analyze a gender disaggregated data, like I mentioned in my previous answer, to see how many women are not only present, but actively speaking and also contributing to the decision making of the project and also the discussions that happened in the stakeholder consultation. Secondly, I would say that project developers may also conduct separate women-centered consultations. In many contexts, women may feel more comfortable expressing their views in women-only sessions, where they're surrounded only by women and men are not actually present in a large amount around them. That's when we feel more comfortable expressing themselves. So if there is such a local context over there, the project developers must analyze and see if they can do something around that. And facilitating such discussions or working with women's organization also ensures that their perspectives are captured. It is also very important to establish a feedback mechanism, like I also mentioned in a previous answer. A feedback mechanism is extremely important. It can be in a form of anonymous survey, suggestion box, or even a grievance mechanism that allows women to express concerns about participation barriers they may be facing, so that project developers can incorporate that in any later session of the stakeholder consultation they're doing. And I think this is also a good place to involve gender experts. So bringing in gender specialists can help projects assess whether consultations are truly inclusive or if women's voices are being sidelined. Their insights can guide improvements. So assessing representation requires a holistic approach, looking at who is present, how they participate, and whether their contributions shape project decisions or not.
Thank you so much, Anshika, for the complete answer. Maybe, Marianne, if you want to add up to that, some strategies that were not yet mentioned till now. If you want to add up to that, happy to have your insights on this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Giovanna. Anjika covered most of I wanted to say, but there's one point that I would like to stress, and that is we were talking about women, but it's also educate the men on the benefits of women's empowerment, that there are opportunities for economic growth, improved household well-being and income, and of course, raising the standard of the women, of women in general. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mariana. So maybe we capture most of the good points about gender. Maybe we move forward with the best practices to wrap up. Yeah, again, not going to take much time here. We talked about better gender disaggregated data collection. This is very important. Also sensibilize the auditors about gender sensitive issues. Check the policies in place and procedures that are relevant to the gender-based violence. And something important here for on-ground site visit is when you're performing, for instance, interviews with women, it would be smart to have a woman around. So this is something that some of the auditors or VVBs pointed out in the poll. So this is pretty much the case. So you already know. So keep it going. This is important. And yeah. So all that saying that we would move forward with the next principle. Thank you.
Thank you, Giovanna. Thank you all. Yeah, so we are now at principle 3. I think we're a little bit tight with time, so I'll try to be a bit more quick. Again, I will launch a question for you all. Here we're talking about community health and safety. It's another very important topic, talking about community exposure to diseases or environmental hazards. Can you think of any examples of strategies to minimize community exposure? You can think about it a little bit. Let's see. Let me check the results. If I get anything in, yes. Let's see. Waste management plan is coming in. OHS certification, health awareness, adequate washing facilities, understanding of project context. Jacoba, would you like to help me here a little bit analyzing these results?
Yes, of course. I would say that the main action to take is to understand the community, their limitations and their possibilities. Education is always a very good tool to promote public health and safety. And health and safety cannot be imposed, but developed in the community context. So again, education and identification of the hazards is capital in developing projects, and of course in assessing these projects as well. There are a couple of things that could be implemented in general terms, like air quality monitoring, waste management programs, also planning and zoning of communities and shared land, and of course vector controls could always be implemented. But again, we need to understand the community and what possibilities and limitations are within this community, and of course develop the health and safety programs in response to the risks identified. So planning, executing and monitoring could be a very good strategy to assure public health.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Marco. Yeah, those are valid points as usual. And maybe we dive a little bit deeper on the principle number 3. So a question to Mariana is, how should a VVB assess the risk identified by the project developer are covering the inherent risks of the nature of the work? So if you can elaborate a little bit on that, thank you.
Thank you, Giovanna. So this is one of the assessment topics as well that we have to assess in terms of the project. So the VVB must critically evaluate whether a project developer has accurately identified and mitigated all inherent risks regarding their health and safety and the community. So they should do, preferably the VVB should do their own comprehensive risk identification and validation, and check that with global best practices and historical data. So in other words, you do a desktop, but you also do an on-the-ground. You also do an on-the-ground. Am I unmuted? Yes. An on-the-ground verification by engaging the local communities, the workers, and independent experts to see what they feel. So consider both direct risks and also the indirect risks. So direct risk would be the risks that the project has itself. And then the indirect risks would be more like environmental pollution, social conflict, or social injustices. So for example, if a project entails building a dam, it's not only the dam-related work and worker safety that's of importance. There's other things like landslides that may come into place that may be important, displacement or relocation of people who lived in the catchment area of the dam. Livelihood options may change due to their relocation, and then of course also access to emergency health care. It's also important to check that the risk mitigation strategies are proportionate to the hazards that's identified. And lastly, the mitigation the mitigations that's put into place, if that fits the capacity of the project, if they're not maybe overscaling what they, on paper, what the reality is to be able to do. And also look for gender and vulnerability risks, which might have been overlooked in other risk assessments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mariana, for that answer. Indeed, important points mentioned. So maybe, Anshika, do you want to add up to the points mentioned by Mariana? If so, please, I invite you here. Maybe with a couple of best practices that you think are important.
Yeah, so talking about best practices, I think it is very important to conduct regular safety audits. So periodic health and safety assessment helps identify risks before they escalate so that you can control them at that place itself. And audits should cover workplace conditions, safety gear usage, and also compliance with the safety regulations. It is also very important to establish a robust incident reporting system. The workers and the committee members should always have an accessible way to report safety concerns, injuries, or even hazardous conditions. So, and the reporting should be encouraged without any fear of retaliation, like also mentioned earlier. Any kind of grievance mechanism, any kind of reporting system should feel like a safe space to the person who's reporting it. And it's also very important to provide continuous worker trainings. If we don't educate the workers about safety protocols, emergency response procedures, and also proper use of protective equipment, then we will not be able to help prevent accidents. There'll be high probability of them occurring if we don't have a trained workforce. And the project developer should always actively seek the stakeholder feedback as well, so that they know what are the loopholes, what are the areas of improvements, if there are anything that is impacting the surrounding communities, or they can also engage the local stakeholders to help identify them the concerns that might be overlooked in the audits they might be conducting. So I think these are a few best practice measures that the project developers can take.
Thank you so much, Anshika, for that. That's indeed important points that you mentioned, as well as Mariana. So we move forward with the best practices. Just as a wrap up again, I mean, most of this I would say most have been already discussed, but maybe something to add is, again, think about triangulation of information. If you're going on the audits and you have the data and you want to prove if the policies are in place and if it's something that it's been respected. So triangulation of information is also very important, and make sure that all these features that we have wrapped up here have been considered during the audit. Thank you, Anna. We move forward to the next principle.
Thank you. Yes, let's go. So we have got here to principle 4. I think we are a little bit tight of time. I really would like to have a Q&A as well, where you can ask questions. So I'm just going to ask the question, Jacobo. I'm just going to put you on the spot, because here we're talking about principle 4, cultural heritage, but also displacement, resettlement. So in the topic of resettlement of a community, if auditor is on a site visit, for example, how would you recommend assessing that there is an implied forced eviction of people?
Excellent. Well, when you're performing the assessment and you're in the field, you might have done some planning, and of course to understand and do some pre-visit research, assuring you correctly identify, for example, the most vulnerable groups, and you focus your interviews and you focus part of your assessment on these groups and these stakeholders. This requires a very good document review and performing an audit plan in the field to again acquire representativeness of the groups. Of course, you can always do a follow-up with authorities, so not just the community, the local authorities are also also a very good source of assessment and, of course, conclusions. Observation and contrasting, cross-checking the information. This is proper triangulation. So you have the theory, you plan your audit, but then in the field you need to cross-check all the information you acquired and all the information you can gather in the field. And again, this is very, very important to correctly identify vulnerable groups and of course, and I think Mariana has emphasized these proper risk assessment. The whole audit is based on risk assessment, and correctly identifying the risk will increase the possibilities of very comprehensive assessment.
Thank you, Jacobo, for that answer. And moving a little bit forward in terms of evidence, the evidence that we need. So here to Anshika, what kind of evidence should we be collected to adequately assess the protection and preservation of cultural heritage in the field? If you can a little bit elaborate on that. Thank you.
Yeah. So VVBs would have multiple set of evidence that they can consult when they're trying to assess if there has been protection and preservation of cultural heritage or not. I think it's also very important to consult a heritage expert if the VVBs feel that there is an adequate need, if the project implementation has a high probability of impacting a culturally important site, then they should hire a heritage expert who can guide them very specifically on the importance and on the ways that the cultural heritage can be protected. And the VEPs can also review the historical and archaeological assessment that would have been done by the project developer, because ideally, in such a scenario where there is high probability of a cultural heritage being damaged by the project implementation, then project developers would do an assessment. So we should dive into that assessment and see that if the culturally significant sites and artifacts has been identified correctly or not. And they should also see the photographic and GIS data that the project developer should have conducted to see what was the before and after of that culturally sensitive place. And the VEBs can also engage with local communities and indigenous people. So community testimonies are invaluable in any audit. And even in this case, it will help in identifying sites of cultural importance that may not be officially documented as well. So when VB is on ground, then they should try and reach out to the local communities and indigenous people would be the best. And then the VBs should also do an assessment of what are the legal requirements of any working in that area. Because usually when there is a culturally important or a heritage site in an area, the local government must have some rules and regulations for the industries to work in that area. So they must have that access to those legal requirements and assess the functioning of the project in line with those legal requirements, and also interview the project developers on what they are doing to ensure that the cultural heritage site is not damaged and is well protected and preserved.
Thank you so much, Anshika, for that. I mean, indeed, very important, all the points you're mentioning. And just to hear a little bit, maybe briefly, because of time, do you think of good examples to assess this representativeness of these minor groups, or even the indigenous people, for instance, during stakeholder consultations? Can you give us some insights there? Thank you.
Yeah, so ensuring representativeness means actively seeking input, from all relevant groups and not just those who are easiest to reach. So VABs need to assess, who are the affected or interested stakeholders, and they may also reach out to expert stakeholders for specific technologies which are being implemented. The VB should also track a demographic representation of that area. I mean, the project developers can provide all this information, and that can be verified by the VBs when they are on ground. So collected data on attendees' gender, age, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status must be compared against a broader community profile. So that to see that, if the people from all the communities, age group, and sectors and gender did attend the stakeholder consultation or not. And then this must be validated through a post-consultation feedback, the follow-up interviews that the VBs would do when they're on ground. They must see and ask, if you were there, if you did get the information about the stakeholder consultation or not, were there any barriers, or if you were not even aware that something like this is happening, then on-site interviews are the best way to collect information on whatever happened at the time of stakeholder consultation. And finally, offer multiple ways to participate. This goes out to both the project developers and VVPs. So not everyone can attend a physical meeting. So offering maybe an online survey, a radio discussion, or community representatives can help reach out a wider audience. So in case there is a difficulty for the project developer, for the VVBs to go on ground and interview the stakeholders, they can also do it telephonically. Seek project developers help in reaching out to people who are in remote areas. They can do it over phone or over video conferencing if that's possible.
Thank you for that, Anshika. Indeed, very valuable points there. And we're passing now to the best practices. Again, I'm not going to go into detail. It's all summarized here. So important maybe to mention for the, in terms if we're going to interviewing or the auditors are interviewing on the field, this indigenous people or minority groups, important to state here is that they need to really have for instance, a separate location where, I mean, in terms of comparing to the ones where the interviews are taking place. So this is very important. Also introduce the risk level assessment. What do we mean by that? The auditor needs to be prepared for that. I mean, for instance, by conducting the risk assessment prior to the audit, they will have the auditor previously, they will need to identify the elements of the standard that are most likely to be critical, in particular to geography, for instance, or if it is an area which is a deforestation area or been a historical area for forced labor. So all this needs to be taken into account before going to the field and conducting the auditing. So these are a couple of points that I would like to add up. And again, these are summarized best practices for principle number 4. So we can move forward to the next principle, please.
Thank you, Joanna. Yes, we really have very little time. I would just shoot a very quick question to Jacobo. When assessing this principle in the stakeholder consultation, what kind of information do you look for? Can you give us some examples?
Of course, when we talk about corruption, we need to make sure the policies and procedures in place are correctly implemented and correctly monitored. Of course, we need to have as well some training on the communities and the people, the stakeholders of a project, and awareness as well on corruption issues. And of course, engagement with local communities in the cultural context is very important. And of course, understanding the cultural context as well is capital when assessing this principle.
Thank you so much. Joanna, I think we can do one more question, quick, if you can pick one.
Sure. Yes, thank you, Anna. So the last question, so in terms of principle number 5, maybe, Mariana, since corruption is such a sensitive topic in audits, could you please share some examples on best practice to engage discussions in this matter?
Thank you, Giovanna. The best practice I almost want to start by saying, do not act when it happens, rather than prevent corruption from happening. But the best practices that I can recommend is to have transparent, structured, and culturally aware engagement with strategies. That's essential to ensure integrity while we're fostering cooperation. So we must establish a non-confrontational, trust-based approach when you're talking about corruption. A trust-based, not like something that we've recently seen on international television, but we must trust each other and have respect for each other. Lead the discussions as a collaborative risk management rather than an investigation. Ask the people's collaboration rather than having a police-style approach. Use neutral, fact-based language, like rather use integrity risks instead of corruption. Conduct off-site interviews and things to look for is look for patterns of inflated costs, repeated sole source contracts, same people contracted all the time, family members being contracted all the time, same surnames, and discrepancies between on the ground and reality reports. We have technology to use nowadays, so use things like drones to do assessments from the air if a project has really progressed as far as it should be, and in terms of those things. So I don't want to go too much further because I know we are very tight for time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mariana. This was very useful. So Anshika, if you want to maybe add up a couple of points there to Mariana's answer.
Yeah, I think Mariana covered it pretty well. Just to add on a few points on that, just to build it up a little more, there might be a few red flags that the VVBs might be able to see when they're on ground to identify if there's any non-compliance of this principle 5, which is corruption. So if there are some apparent lack of transparency in financial records, like Mariana also mentioned, if there are certain stakeholder complaints about favoritism or missing funds, if there is unusual restriction on community involvement or access to information, if you see there is any evidence that the project contradicts the local laws, but even then it is functioning, and if you see the inconsistencies can be found in employee or end user interviews, then these can be a few red flags for corruption principle. And also, in addition to that, I think it's very important for the VEBs when they're going on ground to do a background research to see if there are any media or news pieces against or in favor or whatever. It's very important to have that holistic opinion on that project activity from the publicly available information point of view as well before going on ground, so that you're able to join the dots and better identify any non-compliances on ground.
Thank you so much, Anshika, for that. And Mariana, so yes, we are coming to the end. So I would say, yeah, just on best practices, I would not go into detail again. Just we'll discuss all of this. This is the way, make sure you have a whistleblower mechanism in place for the staff, and also and cross-check information. So this triangulation again comes again, here's a best practice for corruption. This is a very important and strong tool to be used. Make sure that the information you're getting is you can validate the information that you're getting on the ground. So yes, so that's from in terms of the best practice to add up to what has been discussed. So thank you so much. So back to you, Anna, to wrap up the session today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I really wanted to answer a few questions. We are now at the hour. I'm not sure if people can stay a few more minutes, because maybe we can take some questions. There is anyways a recording maybe for the ones who need to leave. Can we extend maybe a few more minutes? What do you think, panelists? I will need you, of course.
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay.
That would be a pleasure.
Yeah, okay. So there is one question related to human rights. So going back to principle 1, talking about how to verify requirements for temporary workers. Can somebody elaborate a little bit on this?
I think I can take that, Anna, if Mariana and Nicopa are fine with that. For the temporary workers, project developers usually have a hiring mechanism. They have an entity with whom they have a tie-up for hiring the third party or external employees who are not directly on the payroll on the of the project developer. So I think validating or reviewing that contract with that external agency is very important to see if the safeguarding principle requirements are also incorporated in that, in terms of the provisions that the employment contracts must have, in terms of protecting the child labor, in terms of protecting them from any hazardous work, or maybe number of hours, or all the trainings and everything that should be provided to the internal employees, along with, of course, the third party or the external employees which are being hired. So I think these would be some things to start with, but then the gold standard safeguarding principle does not delineate the external employees hired from the internal employees which are on the payroll of the project developers. So they should be considered in the same bucket when doing the assessment.
Great, thank you, Anshika. And very quick, another question about Principle 4, displacement and resettlement. They're asking if there will be situations wherein there is some agreements with people who agreed on the resettlement, but then can go back and demand additional benefits. How would you assess the situations?
I believe I can take this one very, very, very quickly. Yes, if there is an agreement, this is part of the design of a project, and in assessing displacement and agreements, we need to understand what was the origin of this decision, and of course to verify and assess with interviews and the local communities their willingness to participate in the project under certain conditions.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you all for staying a few minutes longer. I'm really now going to wrap it up. Thank you so much. So we just wanted to close with a slide to remind you of what you can do. You have rights to ask questions and to reject evidence, seek expert advice, but also please remember that you're responsible for, as an auditor, you need to be independent, you need to be reporting your findings transparently, and of course, maintain confidentiality. I'm not going to stop too much on this slide because I know you're all aware of this. It was just a little reminder from us to wrap up the session. And as usual, just very quick, if you have any questions, please reach out to Giovanna and I. We're very happy to help. As I anticipated in the start of the session, we have a new session coming up at the end of March, on the 25th of March. It's a training of blue carbon and mangroves methodology. So it would be nice to see you all there again. And before you go, I'll be launching a very quick poll. Please take really 2 seconds to give us some feedback on how the session was. Let us know how we did and what we can improve. Of course, we want to hear from you and we want to do better every time. So yeah, I'll leave it open. If you need to jump off, you can. But thank you all so much for being here today, for participating, for giving your input. And of course, thank you so much to our panelists, Giovanna, Jacobo, Anshika, and Mariana. It's been really great to be here today with you. Thank you so much, and I wish you a really nice rest of your day.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.